that the organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies, plain and simple.
Is that an accurate statement?
I don't believe it is.
James Comey is firing back against the president's claims and asking the Justice Department to set the record straight. Our senior justice correspondent Pierre Thomas joins us now from Washington. Pierre, why is James Comey taking the step of challenging the president?
Sources tell me that Comey believes that what President Trump tweeted was misleading and inaccurate, and all but suggested that the Bureau acted improperly. Protecting the integrity of the FBI is a huge issue for Comey.
Jeremy Bash was the chief of staff at both the Defense Department and the CIA. Now he's a national security analyst for NBC News. Jeremy, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Willie.
Let's assume for a moment, and we'll revisit this premise in just a second, that Donald Trump is onto something, that President Obama, as he claims, bugged Trump Tower in the lead up to the election. Would President Obama have the power to warrant surveillance of a private citizen?
Absolutely not. After Watergate, after Nixon, Congress passed a law that said that whenever the executive branch wants to engage in wiretapping or surveillance of people inside the United States, they have to go to a federal judge and get a specific warrant. And Willie, I have looked at these warrant applications from my time inside the intelligence community. They are voluminous filings. They are done by career lawyers, and they are presented to a federal judge, and those federal judges are hard graders, and they turn the Justice Department around all the time and say, go back and do more homework, bring me more evidence.
So we're throwing around the term FISA court, FISA warrant. Let's explain a little bit, Jeremy, of what that means. The Federal Intelligence Surveillance Act, 1978, as you suggested in a response to Nixonian domestic spying. How does it work exactly? What is a FISA court and how does it work?
Sure. The FISA court is made up of judges from the federal courts who are appointed to serve on this special panel, and they work with the Justice Department. The Justice Department and the FBI go to them with a filing that says, we suspect somebody in the U.S. is a foreign power, and that's a term you're going to hear a lot, Willie, a foreign power, say working for the Russians, for an example. This is what's done against spies like Aldrich Ames, Robert Hansen. When we suspect someone's an American who's working for a foreign power, the FBI and the Justice Department go to these judges and they get a warrant to actually listen to their phone calls and listen to and read their emails.
Okay, so let's walk through the potential of what these tweets mean. Okay, the first one would be that the FBI legally wiretapped Donald Trump. What would that tell you, Jeremy?
Well, that would tell me that a federal judge found probable cause, meaning enough evidence to believe that either there was criminal activity or that there was foreign espionage activity in Trump Tower. And specifically, Willie, I think what it means is that a federal judge found that people in Trump's organization were colluding with the Russians.
So if the NSA, is it possible the NSA was listening to a foreign entity, say a Russian, and Donald Trump's conversations or those of his associates were swept up in that collection of data?
Yes, and that is another possibility, Willie, which is that if the NSA was, for example, surveilling or listening to Russians overseas, and the overseas targets were the target of the surveillance, and they happened to be talking to people in Trump's office in New York, that could have been swept up. The intelligence community calls it inadvertent collection. When that happens, what happens, Willie, is that Americans' privacy is protected. When those reports are disseminated, basically the Americans' names are blacked out. But that's different than what the president suggested here. He suggested that actually his office was the target of the surveillance. And again, in that case, you would need a federal judge to approve that.
And then the last option is that President Trump made the whole thing up. Jeremy Bash.
Is that an accurate statement?
I don't believe it is. The department has no information that supports those tweets.
Is that an accurate statement?
I don't believe it is.
The president accused Mr. Obama and presumably the FBI of engaging in McCarthyism. As you understand the term McCarthyism, do you think President Obama or the FBI was engaged in such conduct?
I'm not going to try and characterize the tweets themselves. All I can tell you is we have no information that supports them.
Is that an accurate statement?
I don't believe it is.
And would it be legal for President Obama to have ordered a wiretap of Donald Trump?
I don't believe it is.
Third, the president stated, I bet a good lawyer could make a great case out of the fact that President Obama was tapping my phones in October just prior to the election. Director Comey, you're a good lawyer. Can you make out a great case that President Obama wiretapped Mr. Trump's phones just prior to the election, in light of the fact you have said there's no evidence of that?
All I can say is what I said before, that we don't have any information that supports those tweets.
And finally, the president made the following accusation: how low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very sacred election process? This is Nixon Watergate, bad or sick guy. Director Comey, the president has compared Mr. Obama to Nixon and purported wiretap of Trump phones as another Watergate. Director Rogers, in an effort to explain why there was no evidence supporting the president's claim that Obama had wiretapped him, the president and his spokesman, Sean Spicer, have suggested that British intelligence, through its NSA or GCHQ, wiretapped Mr. Trump on President Obama's behalf. Did you ever request that your counterparts in GCHQ should wiretap Mr. Trump on behalf of President Obama?
No, sir, nor would I. That would be expressly against the construct of the Five Eyes agreement that's been in place for decades.
And the Five Eyes are some of our closest intelligence partners, and Britain is one of them.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen any evidence that anyone else in the Obama administration made such a request?
No, sir, and again, my view is the same as Director Comey. I've seen nothing on the NSA side that we engaged in any such activity, nor that anyone ever asked us to engage in such activity.
And if you were to ask the Brits to spy on America, that would be a violation of U.S. law, would it not?
Yes, sir.
In all but suggested that the Bureau acted improperly. Protecting the integrity of the FBI is a huge issue for Comey. Depending on how Trump reacts, he may find out how fiercely independent Comey can be. And it's complicated because Attorney General Jeff Sessions just recused himself from having anything to do with the investigation into the 2016 campaign, including Russian influence. So Comey will likely have to deal directly with the acting Deputy Attorney General. He's waiting for an answer. Comey is the man who stood up to George W. Bush's White House when he felt they were operating a surveillance program that was not constitutional, and faced a firestorm for reopening the Hillary Clinton email investigation just days before the election.
In a barrage of early morning tweets Saturday, President Donald Trump accused former President Barack Obama of having tapped phone lines into Trump Tower last fall during the run-up to the election. The president offered no evidence to support his claims. Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism, Trump said in his first tweet, posted at 6:35 a.m. In another posting, the president compared his allegations of phone tapping to President Richard Nixon and the Watergate scandal, and referred to Obama as a bad or sick guy. A spokesman for Obama's office, Kevin Lewis, said in a statement that Trump's accusations were false, and that no White House officials or President Obama ever ordered surveillance on any U.S. citizen. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham addressed Trump's accusations while speaking at a town hall in Clemson, South Carolina.
I'm very worried that our president is suggesting that the former president has done something illegally. I would be very worried if, in fact, the Obama administration was able to obtain a warrant lawfully about Trump campaign activity with foreign governments. So it's my job as a United States Senator to get to the bottom of this.
No law enforcement agency or credible source has confirmed that Trump's phone lines were tapped. The unsubstantiated claims come after a tough week for President Trump, as he faced continued scrutiny for his administration's contacts with Russia. This isn't the first time Trump has made claims of misconduct without evidence. After the election, he said he lost the popular vote to his opponent Hillary Clinton because millions voted illegally. An allegation election officials, including Republicans, say there is no evidence for and didn't happen.
After getting the subpoena, you delete 33,000 emails, and then you acid wash them, or bleach them, as you would say, a very expensive process. So we're going to get a special prosecutor, and we're going to look into it, because you know what? People have been, their lives have been destroyed for doing 1/5 of what you've done, and it's a disgrace. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Secretary Clinton, I want to follow up on that. I'm going to let you talk about email.
Because everything he just said is absolutely false, but I'm not surprised. Really? In the first debate,
and the audience needs to calm down here.
I told people that it would be impossible to be fact-checking Donald all the time. I'd never get to talk about anything I want to do and how we're going to really make lives better for people.
Is that an accurate statement?
I don't believe it is.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Director Comey, I want to begin by attempting to put to rest several claims made by the President about his predecessor, namely that President Obama wiretapped his phones. So that we can be precise, I want to refer you to exactly what the President said and ask you whether there is any truth to it. First, the President claimed, quote, "Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism," unquote. Director Comey, was the President's statement that Obama had his wires tapped in Trump Tower a true statement?
With respect to the President's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI. The Department of Justice has asked me to share with you that the answer is the same for the Department of Justice and all its components. The Department has no information that supports those tweets.
Is that an accurate statement?
I don't believe it is.
Reading this report, this is a 434-page report that lays out what I consider to be a stunning indictment of the FBI and the Department of Justice, of a pattern of abuse of power. And I will say both the Department of Justice and FBI for decades have had a great many honorable, principled professionals with a fidelity to rule of law. And this indictment, I'm an alumnus of the Department of Justice. This pattern of facts makes me angry, and it makes anyone who expects law enforcement to be nonpartisan and faithful to the law, it should make them angry as well. Now, the press has focused on your specific conclusion that you did not find evidence of political bias. That's a judgment you have. I disagree with that judgment. But I think that judgment is in many ways the least significant component of this report. I think the facts that are in this report need to be understood, and they should be deeply chilling to anyone who understands the facts in this report, and then people can draw the inference as to why that pattern of abuse occurred.
Do you agree with that?
I'm sorry.
Do you agree with what he just said?
I think everybody can, the purpose of this report is to lay out the facts for the public, and everybody can debate and decide what they think of this information. I absolutely agree.
So this 434-page report outlines 17 major errors and misstatements that were made by the FBI or DOJ in securing FISA warrants. A number of them are deeply, deeply troubling. These are not typos. These are not small inadvertent errors. These are grotesque abuse of power. Let's focus on a couple of them. The primary subsource. Primary subsource, and indeed the first error you note in the second, third, and fourth application for the FISA warrant is that the primary subsource reporting raised serious questions about the accuracy of the Steele dossier, which we now know was a bunch of malarkey, to use a term that's been in the news lately, and that the FISA court was not informed of that. Now let's get specifically, so the basis of this Steele report was what's referred to in your report as the primary subsource. That was the principal basis. And the FBI interviewed that primary subsource not once, not twice, but 3 times in January, March, and May of 2017. So that's the basis of this dossier.